Now it's time for the relationship segment, and I've been joined by a fantastic lady, Dr. Kathleen Wills, and she's a counselor, a psychologist, and also a visiting lecturer right here in Ghana at the Webster University. Good morning, Doc.
Good morning.
How are you?
I'm good. How are you doing?
I'm very well, thank you. Very well, thank you. Now, today we want to talk about a certain, maybe it hasn't been talked about enough, but it's creating all kinds of problems in relationships.
Yes.
You, your gadgets, and your relationship.
Yes.
Right. So, as a psychologist or a counselor, what would be your first go-to if someone comes to you and says, he doesn't talk to me, he's always on his phone?
Have you been talking to my husband? Because he says that, I say that to him all the time.
No, we haven't been talking.
You sure? Okay. You know, one of the things is a lot of times people will say that he's not talking to me, and this actually does come up in therapy a lot, or that he's texting instead of talking. And so the phone definitely becomes a part of or an extension of the relationship. And so people have to learn how to utilize the phone instead of it becoming so central in the relationship. It's hard though.
So why and how has the phone in particular,
yes,
you know, there are other gadgets, but the phone is the main culprit, really. Why has the phone become such, you know, a notorious little gadget in our lives?
Yes. Well, number one, obviously, because you can carry it. Right, it can go in your pocket versus the tablet, which is harder to maneuver. You end up using the phone for a lot of things, checking calendars, checking emails, so it's right there. It's quick, it's fast, and so even to send messages to your spouse or to your partner, please pick this up from the store, don't forget to do this for the children. It's an immediate way to reach somebody. If somebody's in a meeting and they can't pick up the phone to have a conversation, you can send a text message. And so it's instant gratification when the person responds. When the person doesn't respond, or the way that you want them to respond, like they'll choose to respond with an emoji instead of with words. And then you spend your time going, well, what does that mean? I just spent my time writing 300 words or characters, and you respond with a thumbs up or with a, you know, a smiley face or just an okay. And so that can now,
I see where that is.
That can cause a whole lot of problems. But you have some people who are more verbose. They'll use more words. And you have other people which tend not to use a lot of words. So now it becomes a relationship dynamic where, what type of communicator are you? And those are conversations, not texts, but conversations that need to be had.
So there's so much stuff going through my mind right now that I want to ask you everything at once.
Go for it.
You have a situation where someone says, if it's important, call me. Don't text. But on the other hand, the one who's being told this is multitasking in his day or in her day, right? Has maybe 10, 15 different things doing at the same time. And it's easier to micromanage or basically handle all the different things by staying on WhatsApp. You know, communicating, texting, saying this one is doing that, this one take care of this one, take care of that, you know. And so in the process of it, I say to you who I'm in a relationship with, let's do X, Y, Z, you know. And on the other end, you're offended because you don't necessarily multitask in your 9 to 5.
That's right.
And so if it's important, you want me to call and not text. Deal with it.
Again, that's communication. And so there needs to be an understanding between the two parties. How are we going to use this technology? How are we going to use this extension of us to stay in the best relationship possible? And so we're going to have to talk about it. If my 9 to 5 calls for me to do 10 things at the same time, you as my partner, you as my spouse, need to have an understanding of what my day looks like.
Yeah.
But if I'm not communicating that with you, I'm expecting your day to mirror my day. And there's that misunderstanding that happens.
Okay, recipe for disaster.
Definitely.
Now, somebody walks in through the door. At the end of the day, spouse is already at home, and immediately a beep on the phone, checks the phone, sees a whole lot of text messages whilst he was driving. He hasn't read any of them. He gets onto the phone and starts dealing with. Wife is at home, she's offended because you've just walked into that. You've spent the entire day at work.
That's right.
You just walked in.
That's right.
And you're still on your phone.
That's right. And see, what happens is people don't recognize that phone really represents the world, something other than myself, right? Because the phone is a gateway to everything else. And when we're home, we would finally like it to be you and I and leave the world out. But every time you click that phone, you're bringing people into our space. Exactly.
Okay.
Exactly.
Okay, so how do we resolve that, though?
Right.
I mean,
phone's over. So there's several things you can do. Phone's over for a period of time.
Okay.
And or you have the phone for a period of time. So let's say, for instance, after the drive, I've only been in Accra for 2 weeks now, almost. I've seen the traffic. I've sat in the traffic. So I can imagine.
It's a fair bit of it.
Right. Yeah. And if you're honestly being safe and you're not checking text messages, WhatsApp, while you're driving and you wait till you get home, you can have
I wait till the traffic stops.
Okay, good.
I wait till the traffic stops.
But you have a lot of messages, and that's just on one. That's not counting Instagram, Facebook, and all the other apps that allow you to receive messages, let alone emails. So now, some of these you do need to tend to. So then therefore, if you set up a time in the day where you say, okay, I come in and the first 30 minutes or the first hour, whatever is realistic to your life, I need to finish this part of my day. So this means I'm going to check email, I'm going to do this, I'm going to do this. And then it is just going to be you and I reconnecting without technology in the way. And we can even set up that amount of time. So again, it's a discussion. It opens up the reason that communication is so important.
All right, so the issue of bedtime. The phone can be as private as you want it to be. It can be as public as you want it to be. It's bedtime. At what point do we choose to separate ourselves entirely from the phone for the rest of the night? I think that a lot of people are guilty of developing emotional ties with the world, whoever is that world represents, whilst lying by their significant other.
That's right. That's right.
Talk us through.
So again, it's that conversation. How are we going to do this? Which way is this not going to be disruptive for you? So within my home, my husband actually leaves his phone in another room. Because what I'm not going to do is wake up every time there's a ding, ding, ding. It's very disruptive to your sleep. It's not restorative for your health. So you need to put it somewhere or silence it if you can. Now, I understand, like in my situation, my mother is elderly. Sometimes I have to have the phone right next to me in case of an emergency in the middle of the night. That's one thing. But turning notifications off so it's not constantly buzzing is important. If you can set a time where you put the phone away, just for your health, your physical health, between 10:30, 11 p.m. and 2 a.m. is such a restorative time for your brain, for your adrenal gland. So if you can get off of your phones during that time, that would be very, very important. But I know I'm bad. I was telling Aurora last night, I was trying to go to sleep, and people in the States, because of time difference,
a different time,
right, were calling me. And so I'm going, but I have to go to bed. It's midnight. I have to go to bed. So, but you have to set up parameters. You have to set up boundaries, and then you have to stick to them. But it's a conversation, again, that has to happen.
All right, so where do you stand as far as passwords on phones?
Yes. See, now, I have to say, some people would say I'm spoiled. I have passwords to all of my husband's information. And even before he was my husband, he always gave me access.
Okay.
So, and vice versa. There's nothing there that needs to be hidden. So that, again, if you notice, I keep saying communicate, talk about these things. When you're dating someone, when you're interested in someone, find out what is their stance on these things, because trust, it's going to continue when you go to get married. Marriage doesn't unlock some magical moment where all of a sudden you have all the passwords. If you don't have the passwords before you're not going to get them there because it's become a part of your relationship. So that needs to be conversation about how are we going to handle these technological devices, which again are supposed to be a part of the relationship to enhance it. And so when these devices start to be a detriment to the relationship, then again, that opens up communication to find out why is this getting in the way. And usually it's just a symptom of something else.
Yeah. So would you say that one is better than the other, or they can both be good in terms of either we share passwords or we don't know each other's passwords? Does it matter?
Well, it depends on the relationship.
Okay.
If there's a reason, there may be a reason why there's passwords on there for your job. For instance, as a counselor, a lot of my work is confidential. And so, but going into the relationship, he and I had this conversation. I said, there are going to be things that I cannot tell you. Ethically, I am bound to the ethics code of psychologists. I am bound to keep people's privacy. Understand that. We will meet people on the street who will speak to me. I will not be able to tell you how I know them, because if they're a client, I'm not going to say that that's a client. So depending on my profession, your profession, there's a reason for why that's there. His profession doesn't call for that. So then therefore it's like, okay, well, here's my information, you have access to it. But again, this was all a conversation ahead of time, before. Now, has it gotten in our way? Yes.
Okay.
Sometimes we're sitting at dinner when we're out at a restaurant and his face is in the screen as opposed to on me, and I don't understand that, because why is there anything that you want to look at besides me? So, and I will say that to him, and he'll be like, okay. But sometimes things are happening in real time that he needs to tend to work-wise. So we have to have that open conversation. But yes, it can be very, very frustrating.
So I do understand the fact that you can have a conversation at the beginning of a relationship and talk through the different dynamics of what it is you expect and so on and so forth. What about midstream correction?
Definitely.
How important is that for
you know, it's interesting. When we started dating, one of the things he said to me was, let's check in with each other every season. So in the States, we have our 4 seasons, right? Let's check in every season. So even if we do a quarter, right, once a quarter, let's see how we're doing. Let's see where are we really strong in our relationship and where are the places where we need to grow and need to work on. And I was like, that's a great idea. So I hold him to that. And we do the check-ins. And so now, almost a decade later, we're still doing those check-ins. And so we have to, things like tone of voice. You know, I didn't notice your tone of voice was like that early on. That's really bothering me now. And so let's do the check. Things like you not letting me know where you are after a certain amount of time. You know, so we have, these are things because we want the relationship to work. Right? We want it, we should be better together than we are apart. And so now let's look at what's getting in the way. And again, back to technology, sometimes that's getting in the way.
All right. So what's your worst experience that you've had counseling people as far as gadgets and interference of gadgets in relationships are concerned?
Those arguments that happen via text to each other are sometimes the absolute worst. And then here's the other thing. When people think that messages went through and the other person hasn't received the message. Because technology sometimes...
it fails.
Exactly. And people don't take that into consideration. And so I'll get a phone call or I'll get a message. He hasn't responded, blah, blah, blah. And they're going to town. And then next thing I know, I get them in session. I'm like, okay, pull your phones out. and there is the message from her, and there's no message from him.
Okay.
Okay?
Okay.
So many times you
She
have
sent
to
it,
check.
he didn't receive it.
He didn't receive it.
Wow.
So I always encourage people, check. So a lot of times if I haven't heard something after a while, I'll say, did you receive this message?
Yeah.
And then they're like, no, I haven't. And you'll get a screenshot with, this is the last thing that I received.
Yeah.
So we have to recognize that technology does fail from time to time, and there needs to be that check-in.
What would you say would be your go-to, maybe 3 or 4 points that you can say how technology can improve your relationship?
My goodness, the first thing, funny enough, I thought about, it can help with shopping. Because when you're out, right, and somebody says, remember, we need this, right? So the to-do lists are very important. The reminders of what needs to be done. Let's just take, for instance, now, I'm here, my husband's in Philadelphia. There's still things that need to happen. So he's scanning me bills that need to be paid online, and just different things like that. So it really can increase communication, but that foundation of healthy communication has to be there. Yeah, it has to be there.
Wow, that's fantastic. So you've given us the points to help us in terms of making relationships work. And we've looked at the issues of the absolute worst scenarios, people don't receive messages and all those kinds of things. If you were to give advice to a couple that have walked in off the street, they called you, booked an appointment, they've come in, the challenge is that we're fighting all the time. As far as the phone is concerned, there's always a fight going on. I do realize that you said that it could be symptomatic of something else.
Yes.
How do you approach, first of all, such a couple, and then the conversation about the device? When does that come in into your therapy session?
Even if we just take that phrase right there and put it in as a question, when does the device come into your relationship? Asking them that question. When are you noticing that your partner is using this device? When are you yourself noticing that you pick up the device? Is it when it's getting hot, the intensity between the two of you, and you're using it as an escape? Because like I said, that phone, that device allows you to escape your present moment and jump into a whole nother world where you start interacting with other people as opposed to interacting right here. And so that becomes the question, what is going on that's keeping you two from interacting? Because honestly, it should be a point that when you and I come together, the last thing I even want to be bothered with is any device or anybody else, because I'm so happy to be right here.
Right there with you.
Right. So what is this giving you access to? How is this, whatever you're accessing, enhancing your life? Because to your other question of what's some of the worst is when someone's being unfaithful, emotionally, or because they're addicted to certain social media pieces. And, you talked about the other day with a guest about that fear of missing out. And so if you're missing out this, what do you mean you don't want to be right here? So now we need to explore what are the relationship dynamics that's keeping each party or one person in the party from being fully engaged in the relationship.
I'm glad you brought up FOMO, the fear of missing out. Why is that a human problem? Why is that even a human problem?
Right. So I would say lack of self-satisfaction. So there needs to be clarity in what is it that you want out of life? What satisfies you? And so if you're living your best life, there's that song, Live My Best Life, so if you're living your best life, I really don't have time for what other people are doing. But if I'm not working towards my goals and achieving my dreams and goals, and I'm so busy focused and living in someone else's goals, then there's that fear of missing out.
Okay. But how do we overcome that? I mean, how do you walk somebody through dealing with that fear and helping them to overcome that?
So it's one of those things that people, and this is where counseling becomes important, or having conversations with people who can help you live your best life. First of all, you have to be still. And a lot of people have difficulty with that. You have to be still.
Be still.
You have to get clarity on what it is that you want. And it can be very short-term goals, and then making them long-term goals, and then creating the action steps to get there. So, and then here's the thing, you may make a goal, you may achieve it and go, you know what, I don't want that. Or even in the process of moving towards it, go, no, that's not it, I want something else. No problem, it's your life. Create the life. My motto is live your greatest life. So what does that look like? Let's take time, let's envision it, and let's start moving towards it. Because I think one of the worst things is to look back and go, I woulda, coulda, shoulda, but I didn't do anything.
But I didn't do anything,
Right.
Right. Yeah, so you said that the issue of conversations, communication, is absolutely the bedrock of any successful relationship.
That's right.
Now, my question is, I understand communication, right? But how do we know that we're on the same page when it comes to understanding what communication is? Because I know communication to be this. But you also know communication to be that.
That's right.
But we're both very sure in our spaces what communication is, right? How do we synchronize so that we're on the same page?
That's right.
Then when you say you don't communicate, I actually understand what you mean. Because I think I'm communicating.
That's right. So here's the thing that throws people off. So you and I are both speaking English right now, but we're still learning each other's language.
Okay.
Because you have meanings for certain words that may be different than my meanings for certain words.
Absolutely.
Right?
Absolutely.
How are we going to know that if I don't ask you, what do you mean by that?
Okay.
And then you tell me what you mean by that, and then you listen to what I mean by that, and we compare the differences, and then we find a happy medium between the both of us. So see, technology also calls for fast communication, but that's assuming we're all speaking the same language with the same understanding. Right. And so communication, to be effective, has to slow down like now. We have to take time and peel it back and look at the various layers of it.
So it looks like introducing a gadget, the phone, into a relationship that already has communication flaws is a recipe for disaster.
It sure can be.
Let's take a scenario. A couple that already have communication challenges. Okay. Throw in the mix the iPhone 11 Pro. How are you going to help them to work through their issues so that they do find a happy medium in terms of understanding each other's communication without the gadgets? You know, and of course, all shiny toys, you know, are very attractive. You dive into them and you want to be in there and find out how they work and all that. So how do you help them?
Well, I love your statement of let's introduce this into our relationship. How many people actually do that? We're going to go out and we're going to get this and we're going to introduce this into our relationship. How is this going to help us and enhance our relationship? How many people do that when they go out to buy a stove, a refrigerator, let alone a telephone?
We don't do that.
It's not a thought.
No.
You just do it, right? But we have to look at how is it going to impact our life. Again, is it helping us or is it hurting us? And when it starts to hurt us, how is it hurting us? And what do we need to fix so that it begins to help us again? So if we start introducing concepts like that into the conversation, it may seem silly, but the reality is it is going to be an extension of our relationship. So now how do we use it effectively? It's the same thing when I work with my students. Okay, how are you using this? I have so many students who have relationships just on phones and just via text. And I'm saying, well, have you ever talked to the person verbally? No. We just communicate on text. We just DM each other. Have you ever met the person? No. Do they live here? No. And I'm like, and how is this a relationship? And what are the social nuances? And what are the what's the social etiquette? And so that's also lost when it comes to phone use. There's a social etiquette that's not there. There was a time where we were saying don't use caps because that means you're yelling at people, right? But who's teaching these things? I know a lot of the schools that I'm affiliated with, whether it's grade schools or universities, I don't teach this at Webster University, you know, but so where are we learning social etiquette on these phones? And that's getting in the way as well.
No one is teaching that.
Right.
It's not even a subject that is thought about.
So to my Webster students, here's an opportunity for research, right? We can find out how do we do that.
Yeah, absolutely.
Right.
I like that. So the the last thoughts that you would give to our viewers in terms of you, your gadgets, your relationships, what would you say?
I would say talk. Put the gadget down, set up a time. I think that's one of the first things. Set up a time where it's just you and that other person, whether it's a romantic or friendship relationship, because it can disrupt those relationships as well, right? Yeah. Set up a time where it's a no phone zone. There's places where sometimes you come in and there's a basket where you
drop
put
your phone before you go in.
That's right, and you leave it. And you start to have this interaction, this one-on-one human communication again. And let's talk about how can we make our relationships healthier. And let's work towards it.
Thank you.
You're welcome.
Thank you very much,
Thank
Kathleen.
You.
We've been talking to Dr. Kathleen Wills, who is a counselor and psychologist and also is in Ghana as a visiting lecturer at the Webster University.
Hi guys, I hope you enjoyed this video.
Subscribe to our YouTube channel, The Citi Tube,
for exclusive breakfast daily content and other Citi TV programs.
Like, comment, and share with your friends.